Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I was just telling Pete, I know there were some rockin' parties last night, and I think that might have to do with our attendance. So bless you all for being here. So this is the OpenStack Rocky Roadmap presentation. I'm Ann Bertuccio. I work at the OpenStack Foundation, and one of the things I do is work on our release marketing and communications, as well as with the release management team. And this is Pete Chadwick.
Hi there.
And so we're here to talk about the Rocky release. The Rocky release is scheduled for August 30th. And we'll talk a little bit about the development cycle. Or actually, how many people have seen an OpenStack roadmap presentation before? OK, so just a couple. How many of you would say you're very familiar with the OpenStack development cycle and how this all works? OK, very few again. Perfect. You're in a good place. So basically, how this happens is at the summits here, we have these forum sessions, if you've seen them on the schedule. And that's where users are giving their feedback about where they think, here's my use case, and I really need to see this feature coming for me. The developers take that. We go to a thing called the Project Teams Gathering. And at the PTG, the developers, they divvy up in their rooms. It's kind of like developer summer camp. And they just focus for a week on getting that work done. We have the release. We come back to the summit. And we share some feedback about, that feature didn't work for me. It worked really well. This is what I need to see next time. So the loop goes and goes and goes. So this roadmap, what we do is we just had a PTG in February for the Rocky release in August. And a lot of this information is what's coming out of the PTG. So those teams came back and they said, here's our priorities. Here's what we're going to do for Rocky. So that's where this information comes from. The intent of this roadmap is not to be prescriptive. So if you're familiar with kind of proprietary roadmaps that you might see in other products, it gives you a very kind of almost guaranteed guideline of this is what's going to happen in the next 18 months. Here's where this product is going. And you can kind of lean on it. That's not what this is. This is an open source roadmap. Things can change. They might work, say in February, we're really focused on this feature. There might be an unanticipated complication. Something might come up. Even one of the features today on the developer mailing list, just this week, there's been a change of, I think this is a better way we should go about it. Consequence of that is that it might not land in Rocky. So these are intentions, but doesn't mean a guarantee. The other thing about these features that we are communicating, these are only very, I'd say, user-facing features. So it's not, there might be something very technically interesting going on in the community, and we might not share that today. We're just trying to give the things that are really going to impact users. And if for some reason we looked something over, doesn't mean it's not important or it's not happening. There's 40+ projects in the OpenStack project and over 4,000 developers to most releases. So it's quite a lot to keep up with, and we're just doing our best to summarize it for you. So how are we going to walk through some of this? For each slide, there'll be the feature. We're going to talk a little bit about it. In the blue is going to be a high-level category. So that's something really broad, like user experience, manageability, security. And then in the red, it's where we think we're actually going to see this feature implemented. So for folks who are really interested in Edge, this is going to be important. For folks who are thinking about containers, this is where you might want to check that out. The other thing we have in the OpenStack community is for every release, we have community-wide goals that the technical committee, the TC, puts up, and all the projects work towards them. It doesn't mean that every single project nails it each time, but it's kind of, we pick a couple things to think about where we're going as a community. So one of these for Rocky is kind of got a real bad name, enable mutable configuration. So basically, this is about being able to change configuration options without a service restart. So having configuration being mutable, being changeable, has been a feature that's been around for a few cycles, but it's not implemented in every project. And there's definitely some due diligence that each project is going to go back and have to do to make sure that this happens. So TC said this is a feature, restart without downtime. We're going to see it hopefully across projects. The other thing, just so you don't think we're asleep at the wheel as a community, we are planning to upgrade to Python 3.5. There's a lot of discussions about it. Python 2.7 is end-of-lifed in 2020. So this is just to let you know that we're planning ahead. We're not asleep. Another thing, you probably saw this in the Monday keynotes, people are really excited about this one, is fast-forward upgrades. This used to be called skip level upgrades, but we felt like the name kind of gave you an idea of something that wasn't really happening. So it's not that you're getting to skip a release, it's that you're gonna just spin up the exact things to get you through there as quickly as possible and get to where you need to be. So if you're in Newton, you're gonna kind of quick jump through and get up to Queens. One of the projects leading this is OOO, and they're making a ton of progress. I don't think they're gonna have a finished final product in Rocky, but what you're probably gonna see between now and around the Rocky cycle is the OOO team looking for people who are in a situation like you're on Newton, you're on one of the older releases, Okata, and you're thinking to get up to Queens. They're probably gonna call out and say, hey, we need someone to test some things, we need somebody to look over how we're doing this and make sure that this is gonna suit your use case. So something I wanted to call out if that's you. This one comes from Magnum. So Magnum is a project in OpenStack for container orchestration engines like Kubernetes being first-class citizens. So Magnum's kind of a smaller project, but in the last user survey, 27% of people who have an in-production deployment are interested in using Magnum. So as we've seen more containers come, people are really eyeing this one. The Magnum team is working on cluster upgrades so that you can more easily upgrade that COE. You can upgrade Kubernetes, the version and the image with Magnum. So it'll kind of be like one-stop shopping for very complex deployments. And then another one they have is cluster healing. So currently there isn't a feedback mechanism in Magnum if a cluster becomes unresponsive. And so they're gonna add in these fields health status and health status reason so that you have a better idea of what's going on rather than just, this is unresponsive and no one seems to know why. Containers on demand in Zune. This is the first place where we get to name drop that serverless buzzword, if you so feel like it. So this is about allowing Kubernetes users to run pods and containers on an OpenStack cloud on demand. So with this feature, there's no need to pre-create VMs for those Kubernetes nodes. You'll just have them on demand. The very interesting thing about this, and I think it really speaks to OpenStack's maturity and our integration with other communities, is that to make this happen, the Zune team needs to land a patch in virtual kubelet, which lives in the Kubernetes community. And so they're working on that, they're doing it, but it's just kind of this fascinating evolution where we've been the OpenStack community, now we need to go land a patch in Kubernetes to get our feature in OpenStack done. I think that's really cool. This is gonna be a new one. It's pronounced Qingling, and it's an area, refers to an area in China, I think something about where the water meets the mountains. Another buzzword opportunity with serverless. So they just joined the OpenStack community, and they're gonna have their 1.0 release in Rocky, and they're providing function as a service on top of OpenStack clouds. So you'll use those Kubernetes features to orchestrate containers, run your functions on OpenStack clouds. This one is a little bit of a feel-good slide. There's not a lot of text here, but I think this is a great great nod to how open source works. So the Cinder team, that's our block storage project, in their notes, on their specs, all it said was HA focus, high availability focus. I said, is there a feature? What are you guys talking about? And he said, no, it's just something we're applying across the board, thinking about this user for every single thing we do in the Rocky cycle. And to me, that's my cute little, the blue box is just open source, because that's how this works. That's how this whole process works. The team noticed that a lot of our users have this HA use case, and they said, we're gonna make sure for everything we work on for the next 6 months, we are thinking about them. So I think that's neat, feel good slide. And with that, I'm gonna toss it to Pete to walk through the rest.
Thanks, Ann. So a lot of the features that come into the OpenStack roadmap are coming through what are called special interest groups, or SIGs. So they're typically subsets of operators and users that have come together to say, we're trying to solve a particular problem, and how can what do we need to do in the overall OpenStack project to drive that forward? One of those is the telco operators group, and they're very focused on how do I enable NFV. Does everybody know what NFV stands for? It's Network Function Virtualization. The idea is that you decompose you decompose telecommunications workloads into finite functions. You virtualize those so you can scale the operations across your network, move things around in the event of failures in a very easy and lightweight way. And this is kind of a logical evolution that's been going on in the telco space for quite some time, where they've been moving from proprietary hardware and software solutions to industry standard open hardware built on tools such as Linux to get open source scalability, and now they're moving towards full virtualization of the capabilities so they can more easily and more flexibly respond to demands and changes in the environment. So one of the things they identified is that you need to be able to reserve resources. You know, if you have a function running in a cell tower, it needs a certain amount of capacity to process the cells or to process the calls as they're coming in, to do the handoffs. So you want to be able to identify not only how I'm going to, if you don't know what the attacker project is, it's to enable something called service chaining. So you say, you know, when a call comes in, I do this, then I do this, then I do this. What you want to be able to do is, as you spin up that service chain, okay, what are the resources that I need to reserve to go execute that? So the idea is that we're leveraging capabilities that are coming in through Blazor, which supported resource reservation, to now do that with network function virtualizations through Tacker. Obviously, it's mostly targeted at the NFV use case, but as with all things open source, there may be other ways to take advantage of that. Another area, and I think this one came from some of the users are doing high-performance computing with OpenStack, and the idea is that you want to be able to take advantage of GPUs if you've got them on your hardware, so that when you schedule a virtual machine, you can say, I need GPU capability. Your workload gets spun up on the appropriate compute node, and then you're able to get passed through down to the GPU units to run the appropriate workloads. Another NFV related one, as well as it's HA related, is the ability to specify a minimum amount of bandwidth that you want to allocate for specific functionality. So the idea is that when I'm scheduling a system, I can say, okay, I need to have a certain amount of bandwidth reserved on this server so that you can ensure that, again, your virtualized network function has the capacity it needs to process the workload that you're going to send toward it. This is another one of those interesting names, introspective instance monitoring. We don't name them, we just report them. The idea is that if you're not familiar with Masakari, Masakari is a project that is designed to make it easier to run pets on OpenStack. Even though you're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to be able to monitor, your workload's there, it dies, you don't care, you start it up again. There are customers that have workloads they want to put into the environment, and they want them to be long-lived. They want to have HA capability, so if something goes wrong, they can recover that. So again, another special interest group, I forget what the exact title of it is, if it's HA or
HA working.
Yeah. And that's, they're actually got a session at 11 o'clock, one of the lightning talks, talking about what they're focused on. But the idea is that you want to be able to detect and recover from failures in the compute plane. And so Masakari has been working on external monitoring. So I can track when a node goes down, I can track when a hypervisor goes down, I can track a lot of things like a VM, for whatever reason, stalls and recover from that. But this is actually trying to figure out how I can look within a VM to see that there's something going on. Hence the introspective part of it is look inside the actual workload and see if there's a problem. So again, this is one that's being driven, one of the special interest groups. Ideally, it will land in Rocky, and we'll start to see some interesting ways to do high availability at the workload level. This is again another thing from a high availability perspective and stability is, how can you help a cloud protect itself from denial of service attacks? The idea is that you actually specify limits as to how much resource can be consumed by any one particular task. So when you spin something up, you can say, okay, this is how much capacity this virtual machine, this workload is allowed to consume, and if for some reason you see more of that happening, you can take appropriate actions, such as shutting down the machine or whatever else. The idea is that, when you're running a cloud, as the operator, you have no control over what your users are doing. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, if you look at most enterprise environments, they have a lot more control over what jobs run, and they monitor these things on a regular basis. But as you start to have a more diverse user community, you have no control over what's getting run. So this is a tool that provides the operator the capability to ensure the overall safety of the cloud in the event that something goes wrong in one particular user's workloads. So again, we see this as being very important for availability as well as security. And then the last one that we wanted to highlight is the availability to have more understanding of what's going on in availability zones when you're making reservations. So that so as part of the scheduling algorithm, you can say, okay, if I need to automatically schedule a new machine, I want it to land in this availability zone. And so you have more awareness of not only where the capacity is, so that you make sure you don't deploy something in an availability zone which is perhaps getting a little full, but you give the users the ability to select one for whatever reason they want. Anti-affinity, I want proximity to a particular user base or whatever. So this is again more of a how do I ensure compliance, how do I ensure manageability, as opposed to a real availability issue. Now, these are the features that we thought were most important from a user-facing perspective. As Ann said earlier, there's a lot of stuff when you go through and look through the specs that are kind of internal. Refactor this, which have no impact on what's really happening at the user level, and we've kind of eliminated those and really focused on the ones that we thought that had the highest impact from a user-facing perspective. What we'd encourage you to do, though, is as you go forward, this is where you can see what's going on the actual Rocky release. As Ann said, this is an agile development process. Things come, things go in the plan. This is not a top-down driven roadmap as we in the commercial side of the business do. So I'd encourage you to kind of watch this, and more importantly, we'd love to get feedback. If you think that there are better ways for us to present this information, please let us know that. If you think, I don't know if we didn't see a lot of people who've been to a lot of roadmap presentations, this has evolved considerably over the last 3 years. I mean, we used to start boil the ocean at way up here and drive down into every single project that was going on, and realized that wasn't terribly useful for the vast majority of people. So we've tried to simplify it. As Ann said, we're sure we've missed something in there, that there's some particular hot delivery that people are looking for that we missed as we went through the release notes and the output from the PTG. So I'd encourage you to track this as we go forward. So with that, I think we can stop and open it for questions. Because this is being recorded, if you have questions, if you could go to the microphone, would be helpful. Otherwise, any comments, questions? Going once, going twice?
And I'll also make a note that that release highlights page, saw a lot of phones out taking photos. That won't be, the one. If you go to them now, they will be very blank. So it's something to keep an eye on, keep refreshing as the development cycle progresses. We get closer to August 30th, then you'll start seeing things come in there. So, I mean, you can check them out now, but there won't be anything.
Okay, if there's no questions, then I guess we're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.